One Piece is on absolute fire right now. I don't think I've ever been as excited for the next chapter of One Piece as I have been recently, which may sound crazy coming off of Wano if you know me. I've been following the anime since Thriller Bark was releasing and the manga since the climax of Dressrosa, and in all that time the anticipation for my next weekly injection of the best-selling manga in history has never been this ridiculous. And why is that? I've been pretty vocal about the things I've disliked over the last few years. Wano didn't land for me to say the least, and as much as I don't want to be negative and create arguments in the comment section over my opinions, I kind of have to share my opinion for the purposes of this video. From my perspective, there are two major factors that contributed to my poor experience with Wano, both the weekly experience and on the binge read I did shortly after its completion. These major problems can be boiled down to two key words: presentation and prioritization. A lot of the big, heavy character moments that had substantial setup didn't really land with me. Even things as beloved as Oden's death didn't really speak to me. They felt weightless and lacked the emotional punch for me to really enjoy them as intended. These are scenes I know many people love, and understandably so, but they never really worked for me. And I think that can be attributed to poor presentation. Not necessarily bad artwork or a bad style per se, but the general presentation of scenes severely lacking in delivery. Which is a shame, given that from a holistic perspective, Act 1 of Wano has my favorite presentation in the post-time skip. The paneling, the backgrounds, the character designs, and just the general navigation of the narrative visually is some of the best in all of One Piece. But everything changes drastically from Act 2 onwards. It starts to feel more systematic and gains a constant sense of instability throughout. To me, Wano feels like the arc was simultaneously rushed and stretched out, and this is best seen in the visual presentation and lack of creative delivery for its moments. And the biggest issue with this for me personally is the effects this has on the very fundamental aspects of storytelling: tone, atmosphere, flow. Wano at its heights lacked these things for me, which made what should have easily been the best chapter in One Piece to me feel pretty underwhelming, and that it had failed to capitalize on all of its potential. I absolutely love Gear 5th conceptually. It's one of my favorite ideas that Oda has ever cooked up. I don't think about 1044 when I think about my favorite chapters. The last thing I want to see in arguably the most important Luffy chapter in the series is a terribly handled Orochi and Hiyori plotline, or over half a chapter dedicated to Raizo putting out flames in the climactic standoff of the arc. I don't really care for any of these characters and their roles in the story of Wano because it's all presented carelessly. Had I actually enjoyed the build-up regarding these moments for characters besides Luffy, I probably wouldn't feel this way and find those moments complementary to everything else going on. In a vacuum, I actually really like this Hiyori moment, but taking into consideration the end of the arc and everything that precedes this moment, it doesn't feel like an earned character moment. It doesn't feel powerful or move me in any real way. It's just a cool scene. The truth is, Oda crams an incredible amount of material into every chapter, and understandably, as he wants to finish the series in the foreseeable future. This man has been drawing for 25 years, and unfortunately, his huge brain filled with these many interesting ideas might just be his biggest enemy. There are just so many things that he does not have the time to properly explore and creatively present to the reader. It's just a massive shame the kind of effects this has had on the story, particularly with ideas feeling unfinished or underexplored due to the lack of time. This messy presentation directly correlates with the second key word, which I think it's a direct result of: prioritization, or in this case, a lack of proper prioritization. Many times throughout the arc, it felt like Oda was struggling to effectively balance the massive cast and densely stacked plots of Wano Kuni. There are literally hundreds of separate named characters, hundreds of unique plot threads, and tens of different mysteries and looming questions, all being juggled around in this sprawling arc that was years in the making. It's epic, it's glorious, it's monumental, and it's really, really messy. Wano is an incredibly bloated narrative. It's incredibly difficult for any writer to juggle such a dense storyline with so many moving parts and relevant characters. It's a war, a raid, a festival, and a night of prophecy all at once, and that's just naming a few of the things that Wano is. To try and pull something off like this in a weekly serialized format like manga is incredibly ambitious to say the least, but it's also not surprising for the end result to feel so chaotic. I struggle to see any real flow to the read. Things happen haphazardly and bizarrely, there are still countless looming questions that have been left completely unaddressed, and the arc is just generally very erratic and not in the good way. I completely acknowledge that this is just my opinion, and you are more than entitled to completely disagree with everything I've just said. I'm genuinely happy for you if you love Wano. But with that being said, we arrive at my ultimate point. From my perspective, so far the Egghead arc is an absolutely masterful showcase of what good presentation and prioritization really even means, which is exactly what we'll be exploring throughout this video. Time and time again, Oda has shown a strong handle over this story, with full understanding over what needs to be prioritized. And I think that is the main contributor to why One Piece has been trending every single week, and the community is on fire like never before, with there being a surge in One Piece discourse all over the internet as a result of recent chapters. So let's really break this down. The Egghead arc is currently 24 chapters long, making it 5 chapters longer than the Jaya arc. I mentioned Jaya because these two arcs are functionally very similar. Jaya serves as the linchpin for the Summer War saga, and it is responsible for introducing the main players of this faraway conflict that will take the stage of the story in the distant future. It introduces Whitebeard, Doflamingo, Kuma, the Gorosei, and of course Blackbeard alongside his crew. But beyond just the abundance of setup in plot-related avenues, the Jaya arc is as incredible as it is thanks to the thematic setup of its respective saga. Skypiea promotes the importance of dreams, romanticism, and the boundless potential of human imagination. It connects the past to the future. It's only right that the layup to Skypiea, the necessary build-up to this adventure in the sky itself, masterfully establishes these ideas for Skypiea to fully explore. Bellamy completely ridicules Luffy for being a dreamer. He and the other residents of Mocktown are anti-dreaming. They consider everybody going after the One Piece, the Golden Kingdom, or the Emerald City a fool who is simply wasting their time. And this is all posed by Bellamy as the calling of a new age. He claims the age of dreaming has come to an end. All of these ideas are laid out in Jaya, and Skypiea takes them to the next level, fully exploring and addressing them through its own narrative, which is deeply tethered with the narrative of Jaya. And that's the most important takeaway from this connection between Egghead and Jaya. Yes, there probably won't be 300 chapters between Egghead and the stuff it's building up to, like there was between Jaya and Marineford, but it is undeniably building up to stuff both narratively and thematically. The ideas underpinning Egghead are likely going to be the basis for this final saga's framework, and there couldn't be anything more supportive of this idea than chapter 1082 giving us one of the most idealistic, hopeful, and romanticized attempts at glory and being a quote-unquote real pirate in the entire story. Buggy's speech is honestly so incredibly important, as it gives us an inkling of what we can expect in the foreseeable future of the story. We have Cross Guild as an establishment directly targeting the manpower of the world government, placing bounties on the heads of the Marines. Pirates revolting against the system and gathering common folk to fight for their cause is almost guaranteed to be what Luffy will eventually do. But before we get to see his rendition, we see it under Buggy, Crocodile, and Mihawk, who aren't as kind-hearted and caring as our favorite rubber boy. The conversation between Tsuru and Sengoku, the Marines' perspective on recent events and how the people they are sworn to protect have turned against them out of a lack of trust and respect for their efforts. All of these things building up to what we can only expect to be a global revolution. The times are changing. Emu is in the game. Many of the current Marines are likely to turn against the totalitarian regime that is the world government and fight behind Luffy in the final battle. Shanks just destroyed Kid, Blackbeard defeated Law, and Luffy has befriended the single smartest and potentially most dangerous individual on the planet, making the incoming Egghead incident a cause for concern. Will Luffy also be handed a massive defeat to push the message that the big three of Onigashima aren't entirely ready for the big leagues just yet? Or will he take a tremendous win, reiterating his position as the main character of the story and heavily contrasting against Kid and Law as the only one we can put our faith in to truly be able to compete on this highest level of power? We recently got more on Blackbeard, how he became acquainted with Kuzan and his ideology as a pirate. Living and serving by your own agenda is Blackbeard's way, a scarily similar perspective to Luffy. There are just so many reasons why Egghead has been so incredible thus far, and I know this is kind of like peering into the future and getting ahead of myself with the things I'm praising, but looking at these chapters through the lens of, oh yeah, this is a setup arc for the final saga, really does wonders for your perspective. It's awesome to take things as they are, but I think it's equally as important to take things for what they are when the time is right. This is the first arc in the final saga of the story, and we know enough about Oda's preferred style of structuring to know that this will be packed with so many plot, thematic, and character details that will remain important until the end of this saga, and in turn the end of this manga. So literally every little thing is pretty important. The single thing in this arc I have not enjoyed is the traitor reveal. The actual murder mystery plotline was very exciting and very well presented, but I'm sorry, I was not a fan of this twist whatsoever. However, I still am holding out hope that when we return to Egghead, Oda could reveal that there is more to this than it seems. And I must admit, the idea that a part of Vegapunk, the part of him that represents desire and greed, is betraying him is honestly kind of interesting and has the potential for a lot of greatness. But with that being said, allow me to pose a question to myself. Why has Egghead been so enjoyable for me? And the first thoughts that comes to mind is, when is the last time we've truly not known what to expect in One Piece? It feels like we've had preconceptions and expectations for chapters that were 2 years away at the time. We've always had some sort of idea of what's gonna happen next since Punk Hazard and the alliance of Luffy and Law. Take down Dofi, take down Kaido, take down a Yonko. That is the ultimate goal we've been working towards for the bulk of post time skip. And now we're done. And Luffy's a Yonko. And we have absolutely no idea what's going to happen next. 6 months ago, did any of us really think we'd see Shanks wash Kid? Or that we'd see Blackbeard defeat Law? Or Aokiji face off against Garp? Or Kizaru and one of the Gorosei make ways to attack Luffy with a fleet of warships? All of this is coming out of nowhere, yet still feels perfectly set up and completely in line with everything we know about this story. That's probably the greatest benefit of having a 25-year plus story. We've waited multiple years to see characters like Shanks, Garp, Aokiji, Blackbeard, Mihawk, and Dragon, just to name a few, and it's finally time. We spent so fucking long in the Yonko saga that by simply moving the plot forward in any direction, Oda produces an absolute banger. That is just how crazy the build up for this stuff has been, and just how long we've been waiting to see it all. Literally just the mention of Shanks was cause for celebration a few years ago, and now we're actively seeing him in the manga. Crocodile and Mihawk are literally pseudo emperors trying to build a utopia, for God's sake. This is absolutely insane. I'm sorry if this video feels messy, it probably is, because honestly, what is there really to say besides One Piece is on absolute fire right now? This is the most exciting time to be a One Piece fan, and you really cannot say when Oda is gonna drop the next banger. It could be next chapter, it could be 3 chapters away, it could be 5, but the next bombshell is always just around the corner, and that level of momentum and sheer excitement is ridiculous. I am just so happy to be loving One Piece.